Hello there everyone, Glitter Brush Art here, and today we're going to do a critique paintover for Deviant user NyanDwarf. Let's see here. I'm kind of doing, this is not in real time by the way, this is going to be a voiceover tutorial, or not tutorial, well in a way it's a tutorial of voiceover critique. What I'm using is Photoshop CS6. It's not the newest version, well, the newest version of CS6, but it's not the newest version of Photoshop. I'm going to use my basic round brush, and we're going to work on some problem areas, which is usually around the face, and it's always the features that whenever we're working from a photo or from imagination, you always want to have some reference. And here I pull off a reference I found that was as similar as I could find to this user's piece. The lighting doesn't have to be exact. It's always good to have similar lighting, but you're not always, unless you take a picture of yourself, which is always better. It's not always readily available, but you can use some of these features of this reference to help us. Now for tilted up heads, it's a little harder to get proportions because everything's kind of, you have to watch for what's smushed and what doesn't smush, and it's not a common pose that people usually do. So it's something that artists like me have tried to avoid. So I know NyanDwarf has really put a lot of work into this, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna tear it apart. It won't be bad, don't worry. We're just gonna get our reference right here, and we'll just dive right into this. Now, usually, when I work from reference, I'll either have it side by side, or I'll have it, if I'm doing a portrait, I'll have it side by side, but if I'm just referencing, I usually just look back at it and such. But what I noticed here was that the forehead usually has a softer gradient or kind of a blend, and we're just gonna blend this out right here. I had the video sped up just a little bit because if I had it on regular time, it would have run a little over an hour. But NyanDwarf, let me know if you would like, if this is too fast for you. Just let me know if you would like the full video without, well, this is a full video, but just complete real time, and I can send you a link. I don't know if the file will be too big, but hopefully this will be okay. Or actually, you can actually speed this down on YouTube. It should have an option for that. So we're just gonna blend this in, and usually the highlight above the eyebrows is about half the height of the eyebrow itself. And whenever you're having hair and then hair going over the face, there's gonna be sort of a shadow. It won't be like perfectly like that same highlight color or that pale color. So we're just gonna kind of blend that in there. And I kind of fixed some of the strands earlier. The hair I'll get to last in this portion of the video. Yeah, the seam of the hair, usually it has like some sort of, I'm using the multiply layer here, which you can find if you go to mode on the top left and then click multiply. And I'm fiddling with the size and opacity and such, but here I want to brush and start with big strokes, real big strokes, and then I'm using the standard brushes. So this is the round medium stiff brush. It has a texture of hair, and then I make it a little smaller, and then I just keep blending it in. I pull in some of that yellow or some of that pale pasty whitish yellow, and I bring it back with that black or that dark purple. It doesn't look purple, but just kind of the hues are of the hair. And just kind of bring in some of the details. Because versus the first version and the second version, the first version kind of is a little more stubby, and you want to make it more blended and seamed, kind of like the hair particles or cuticles. I can't talk today. The hair follicles pulling from where they come from instead of it just kind of just sitting there. Now with the brow bone, you want to have a more of a, this is something that took me a while to learn how to do before, because some people, there's a lot of different brow bone variations in people for some reason, and it usually has to do with how the nose starts out, since noses are one of the most unique features of the face. The whole glasses area of a face it's easy to mess it up when there's a lot of hard shadows, because it's a mixture of soft, hard, and medium shadows. So if one shadow's not right, then it kind of misplaces the whole face. So it takes a while to get the area of the eye down. But yeah, I would get in the creases, like between the side of the bridge of the nose and the eye. It should be a little soft. It should be much softer and not as harsh as you had put down. I guess you put a lot of hard, unnecessary shadows on top of the button of the nose and between on the sides of the bridges, which it doesn't have to be that harsh or scratched in. It can be a little more blended. And I suggest using like a hard round brush for Photoshop. If you're using Photoshop, if you're using anything else, I would just play with the opacity and hardness and just block it in first, not worrying about any detail, and then just making sure you have the basic lighting down, and then get detail in later. And it'll save you a lot of work. Yeah, I can tell your light source is coming from the left. There's some parts of the face where it looks like it kind of confuses the light source, so we just want to make sure you're always aware of your light source, so that you can have a bit of kind of a guide. Basically, knowing where your light source is gives you a guide of where to paint and how the shadows work. It takes a while to get to know how to work shadows, and I recommend just keep doing portraits just as much as you can. No pressure. Just each portrait's not going to be perfect. I know it took me at least, I would say, 30 portraits before I actually started getting the hang of it. And some people are faster at it. I felt like I took a long time, but you start learning each time. You remember it better and better. Like maybe you do one portrait, but you only really remember how to do the nose, because it's hard for us to consume and retain all that information at once. So it takes so long to repeat it to really ingrain our muscle memory. And here I'm just sculpting out the nose. I usually start. I just block out just the main shadow of the whole nose and where the nose is not touching, and then I just put in the little features, the nostril holes. And the nostril holes are kind of a little bit turned up, kind of an upturned shape since the face is up a little bit. And I can see it was hard. This is a hard angle, so I know you tried to get the features to follow the angle. But some of the features seem like they're following a more higher tilted angle, whereas some of the other features are in a low tilted angle. And then the jaw, it looks like more of a front facing angle. So we'll get to that. We'll start matching that up. It's always, it's hard to get perspective, because the hardest thing about perspective is getting the facial features to align all together at the same time without them looking too smushed or too far apart, or just basically to get them to look all in the proper perspective. And always use reference. It really, really helps. I want to assume you used reference from this if you're doing a portrait study. Just always get your blocking in first. Right now I'm just editing and just kind of fixing in some of the details and values for you. Like for example, the eyelids, you want to make sure you use like a thin, not a hard brush, but kind of a medium brush, a thin brush, to and kind of make it like not too big, but use it to define the creases. And also you can use a little bit of a harder brush the same size to not pencil thin, because it won't look realistic, to kind of just brush in those the lash lines and the eyeliner. And you did fine in the eyelashes, so I won't get to that. I could keep painting over and correcting, but I'm just kind of going over the main issues here that I see right off the bat. Now, since the light's hitting from the left, the top left, I'm assuming, you're going to want to keep that highlighted, because it's not, and the head's tilted, so the light is actually hitting the top above the cupid's bow, and there's not as much shadow as one would think that would be there. And the nose itself, it's going to be, since it's on the higher point of the face, it's going to hit a lot more light than shadow. If anything, the only part shadow will hit will be on the right side there, as you can see, and then the creases next to the eyes. I use a smudge tool from time to time to smooth out some of those parts. Now here I use this method. This is really unique to Photoshop. I'm not sure if other programs can do this, but what I do is I'll take some features if like I don't feel like repainting the whole thing. If it's just really a placement issue, I'll adjust it, and I'll make a new layer. I'll select it, make a new layer, and adjust the size, and then just paint it back into the original image. But as you can see here, when the head is tilted up, the eyes kind of downturn a bit. Not a lot, but just a bit, because things are kind of smushing as it goes into a different perspective as you're going, kind of backwards. And it will fix the pupils and irises as well. But yeah, since it's all related to each other, one's not going to change and the other changes, it's all of it changes. So it's all going to adjust slightly. And so with the eyes, what you want to do is we want to make them a little bigger because you made them a tad bit small. So we're just making them a little bit bigger, and we'll get to the irises in a bit. And one thing too is when it's tilted up, the eye bags are a little bit, they kind of hug the underbags they kind of start angling up, like they go with the angle of the downturn. So you want to just slightly, very, very slightly do that, otherwise it'll look a little strange. But and also to the nose, the edges of the nose are going to be more downward, whereas the middle of the nose, the very bottom part between the two nostrils, will be a little bit more up. And then the eyebrows need a little bit of a shape up to the placement. They're gonna be following the brow, like the actual brow bone. Now here I think we're gonna work on the mouth next. This part I can see the teeth look a little 2D rather than 3D, which it's hard. It's with proper study you can easily get that trained into your memory. The teeth are a little bit whiter than they should be. Teeth really actually in photos are not really white unless they were edited white. They're usually actually a slight off yellow, or even a gray, or even a purple. They almost tend to be the color of the lips because they're not being hit by direct white light, even though they are technically white essentially themselves. Some not pure white. They most of the time, for most natural lighting, they're going to be a bit of a mid grayish white color, because they're not being hit by harsh light and they're being covered by the shadow of the lip, so it balances it out. And then also, if it's in harsh lighting, most likely it's going to be even darker if it's going to be covered in shadow. Harsher the lighting, the less options it has to be in the middle. So unless the lighting is like right in the face, then the teeth would be almost completely white. But we'll work on that in a bit. This right now, we're going to work on the chin, is now that we've adjusted the features, this would match more to the proportions that you were trying to go for. The chin is a combo of soft, medium and soft. So you have like the ball of the chin, and then you have the almost rectangle, kind of squarish triangle shape of the jaw. It's coming to a point, which is the chin, so it's going to be more of like a, it's going to be kind of chiseled out, and the light will hit more to the left of the top cheekbone and to the left side of the chin, and to the mandible and the maxilla. The maxilla is the part of the face that's not the chin, and then basically the top half of the teeth, and then your mandible is going to be the bottom, the movable part. And so as we're sculpting here, depending on certain facial structures, the light can be tricky sometimes where it hits, because sometimes when light's coming from that direction, there could actually even be shadow in the dip of where the eye socket is, and so that can be tricky, but you can always zoom out too just to check your lighting. And here it's a little trickier because of where the light's coming, and then the angle plus the type of facial features, so there's a lot to consider. But from doing studying, your mind naturally just takes that in subconsciously, so it's not really memorizing, it's just keep on painting and your muscle memory will do the work for you. So far, you've done a really good job as far as you know vaguely where the shadow is. I would say that your shading is too detailed too soon, I would say, because when it's too detailed too soon, notice that when you shaded, it was you used a small brush, so it just ended up looking a little scratchy. And then you probably thought, oh, well, I need to put a highlight here and there, or a shadow here and there. When you have a big brush, you cover it a lot quicker, and then you're able to shape out the big portions first, and then after you can go and refine. The small brush should really only be used for details and refining, not for shading in big areas, otherwise it'll give you a real headache for your wrist and trying to figure out where all the lighting will go. Because using a smaller brush is a lot of little spaces. I know that's a habit from coming from traditional drawing and only using a pencil. That's one thing I used to do, but I learned to just use the bigger brush, which is something you can toggle with back and forth if you're doing traditional or digital. Now here at the corners of the mouth, at this angle, they're going to be pretty low compared to what you had put before, because they're the corners of the mouth, and the top lip is basically just, the top lip is sitting on top of the maxilla, the top part of the teeth, so it's going to be very rounded and jutted out, and the very ends are basically going to be meeting almost to the top of the bottom lip. Here we're just going to fix up the lighting a bit. I'm not going to do too much with the lips, I'm just going to focus on placing lip placement. So that's how that's painted in. And for the teeth, as I was describing before, when you're painting in, I was starting with a dark color, and then I would get like a medium gray tone and just not fill in like from corner to corner, but just really cover what parts are actually going to be hit by shadow and what are going to be hit by light. Like the back teeth, or like as the teeth follow the like the teeth that are closer to the inside of the mouth on the corners are not hit by as much light, so they won't be as white as the middle. And the same goes for the eyes. The whites, they're never ever really white, they're really just gray. They're always gray, or like a grayed version of a color, and sometimes they're like gray pink or gray yellow. It depends on the lighting too, that it can affect the skin tone. So here you want to do somewhat exact circles, less ovals, because ovals, it's easy to want to do ovals because the eye shape's an oval, or the whites, but you have to think of the eyeball just as its own sphere, and then if you look at an eyeball itself, it's just a circle, like the whole iris, of pupil and everything is just circles that lay on it and kind of fit the form, kind of like if you put a sticker on a ball. If you want to think of it like that, like a circle sticker on a ball, it'll be kind of bent to the shape of the eyeball. And I use an airbrush to do the outlining of the eyes. Now here at the nose, we're going to do a little bit more shading and fix up the bridge. The bridge is a little harder and I find it's the trickiest part when it comes to light, is that it can hit in the oddest places because it's a shape on its own, plus it has its own cast shadow. And then you have to consider the shadows also from it not hitting light. And then of course, if the person, there's different types of bridge nose variations and also cheekbones too, so you want to consider that. And just kind of sculpt it, not with the tiny brush unless you're trying to blend it. I feel kind of bad because I think you painted, you probably took a while to get those eyebrows in, but the little details, the way you painted the eyebrows is, unless you're going for like super hyper realism, and really the details are not too much needed, just as long as you get the form. And most natural eyebrows will have that like corner where the hair comes in, for a more realistic approach. And most eyebrows will have like the natural eyebrows, but like groomed natural eyebrows will have like a couple loose hairs, like they're a little bit spaced out. They're not a complete perfect fade, otherwise it'll look strange. It'll be more like a few chunky hairs at the very beginning of it, and then it starts to like fade a little bit, and then it goes back to its thickness. This can be blended out a little bit more. We don't want it too harsh, so we want to represent the accurate representation of the bone under the skin. And then the lighting and the shadow was just harsh in general, because the light, compared to the light, the shadow didn't need to be that dark. And so we'll put some dark under the eyebrow, where it's not hitting as much shadow, or not being hit by much light. It's always good to zoom in and out too, as I mentioned before. It just really helps you get an understanding of how your painting's coming along, because being zoomed in all the time is the worst thing you can do. Only if you really, like, if you need really good brush control, like you just can't do it from afar, would be when you zoom in. But try your best to just use the biggest brushes as possible that you can for a certain space, and then go in and do detail later on. It took me a while to get out of that habit. I wanted to just get each area done pretty and beautiful and polished. But, you know, I had to really like push myself to not do that, and it really saved me a lot of work. I used to take like, because of when I would just do like each piece and finish each piece and move on to the next piece of something, it ended up making me take about like 15 hours for just one piece. And then when I stopped doing that, when I started using the method of just blocking in and then blending and then detail, it saved me so much time. I was in agony having to do the old way. I don't even think I would ever even remember how to do the old way, but it reduced my time greatly. I went from 12 hours to 6 hours to then when I refined my technique, I do most portraits or paintings within 1 to 3 hours. And it saves a lot of time, because then, like, if you want to just get detail later on, that's the easy part, because, excuse me, it just goes on after you have, like, all your values down and everything, and it just makes it a lot easier, and you don't have to worry about messing things up. Yeah, we just shaded in the nose bridge, and because it's being hit by light and it's higher than most of the face. It's higher, yeah, basically at the angle as well. And we want to follow the cheekbones. And here I got really irritated because Photoshop was being silly, and I was trying to use the smudge tool and it was lagging. So I had to wait like 2 minutes for it to stop lagging. And so I can press the back button. But yeah, sorry about that part. And I just go periodically. It's always good to periodically have that second layer, so you can just view back at what you did, or always have a new layer. I always do everything on one layer unless it's a really complicated piece, but I always do a second layer to compare, like if I'm afraid of like messing up or something, or if like I edit something, like let's say I fix up the nose, and I'll do that on a first new layer, and if I'm just experimenting, and then I'll like hide it and see if I like it compared to what I did before. And if I don't, I can just like erase some parts and then merge it, or I can just scrap it all together, or I can merge it if I like it completely. Now here I don't do too much with the neck, because it really can even just get away with a simple shadow shape. You don't have to do details, but I thought that this was a little necessary because of her the way her head is extending backwards, so I wanted to give a little bit of the neck muscles and tendons to represent that she's kind of having a little bit of a strain when she's doing this position. So I'm just kind of blending it out. I could add more darker shadows, but it's easier just to do it. It's better to do it a little lighter, because the some of the darker shadows, it can throw it off sometimes. Yeah, I could have added, but I wanted to just really focus more on not like redoing your entire piece, but just going over just the major issues, because you and I both can shade in the darker part. The problem was just showing how to shade the neck. The other parts are easier, that can be added later. You showed you already can and know how to shade in the second shadow. We just needed to correct the part. And here we're going to put the pupil, and then just kind of cover on the top a little bit, and then we're going to blend it. We just kind of blend it just slightly, not too blended, otherwise it'll look a little strange. I usually go in more detail with eyes, but then again, you know how to detail eyes. It's just that they were just more egg shaped, so I just fixed the shape and just kind of went over. I'm just comparing again. I got rid of those harsh highlights you put, because skin usually isn't that highlighted unless it's like a highly edited photo, which I would stay away from super edited reference photos, because they usually don't represent realistically what a person will look like. But yeah, I would get some natural lighting photos, or at least just photos that don't look like plastic. Like if the skin looks like plastic, then you might want to stay away from it, because then you won't learn how to practice real skin. So you want to make sure that your photos are good reference photos and always have like a library of them. And with the hair, I use a much bigger brush. I see you knew where to put the highlights, at least for the left part of the hair. Yeah, definitely pull out reference, because since the light is coming from the left, it's gonna and the hair is kind of like bananas shaped, so each strands, so you want to remember where the light is hitting, which they're going to hit in more that direction. I didn't spend too much time in the hair, because hair takes a long time, and you know how to shade, put where the lighting is, or shade the shape, but I would say when you go into detail, start big, so you can just cover it mostly, and just blend it a little bit, and then just smooth things out, blend it, smooth things out, blend it. And I would stay away from the small brush unless you're doing really nice details, but always start big first, bigger. And here, there wouldn't be many, since your lighting's really harsh on the left, there's not going to be a lot of highlights on the right side of the hair. So what we'll do is we'll get a darker color, and I auto contrast just now. It's a feature in Photoshop where it reads the lighting and it just adjusts it based on what's inaccurate. And here I took some near black and I started reshading some darker shades, and put some more use that base tone as a new highlight, and then just kind of faded on where the light would touch. But yeah, if it's gonna be the light on that left side, on the right, on her left side, on our left side, on our right side, it's going to be not very many highlights, because it's just not being touched by the light. I mean, unless the light is just all around, but from what I see on the face and how the shadows hit, the light source is mostly on the left. We can always add some details too, just kind of sculpting in, paying attention to how the hair naturally falls. It'll be more droopy since the hair is light. The thin strands are a little lighter, or a little thicker. The hair seems thicker, so it's going to be dropping a little bit heavier, and it's a thick mass. Now here we want to, I'm not going to do too much here, just going to add some shadow, not very detailed. I tried not to be too sloppy, but just wanted to show and indicate where that shadow is going to be. Because because you want to make sure that every part of your character follows the light source. Now overall, this piece was very well done. I have to say, the detail quality was really on point. The shading needed some work. I would suggest just use bigger brushes, start big, and definitely put detail only where it's really needed. And just make sure you really pay attention to your light source first and then details, because once you put details without really determining your light source all the way, it'll just make more work for you later and more erasing and heartache. And of course, always use reference for perspective and such. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and like and subscribe for more. Thank you.